Welcome to another edition of the Glint Standard. Today you've got Jonathan and Erayne talking about the relationship between agencies and their clients.
Hey.
I mean, we have our conversations off screen, off audio all the time.
All the time. Yeah.
But this is our first time
Together.
Yeah,
first time.
talking together about the client and agency relationship, which we have learned a few things.
Yeah, just a few.
We've had some wins, we've had some losses. We've learned them together and then individually, just in our past professional experiences. So I think it's going to be a good conversation.
Oh, for sure.
And then we're going to give everybody a few takeaways to leave with. Yeah. But what I want to caution everyone, listeners and those that are watching, is that we're not perfect.
No.
So let's put that statement out there. Glint Advertising is not the 100% expert in managing, nurturing relationships. We are pretty good.
Yeah.
I mean, we're pretty good, but we will never propose that we have everything down.
And I think that's an important thing to point out, because clients, a lot of times we use the term clients and it kind of stagnates and sterilizes that idea. But clients are just people. And just like any interaction you do with family versus a friend versus anybody else, those interactions are going to be different. And it's the same way with clients. You know, it's never the same thing for client A versus client B.
Right.
So, you can't, there's no one size fits all approach. You really have to know who you're talking to.
Yep. Ooh, what I think we say that at least 3 times a day. Know your
I think you're underestimating. I think you say it a lot more. Like, know your audience.
Know your audience. It's so important. But I think you're right. But by no means do we know everything. We are going to talk about things that we have observed, perhaps how we have reacted to certain situations, and where we see that you get the most results. And so I know you brought a couple of incidents, and I brought a couple. So where do you want to start?
The number one thing that I think I've pulled this lesson from anybody that I've ever talked to when it comes to a client, and it's transparency. I think a lot of times account managers, project management, anybody that's dealing on a client, one-to-one basis, they think they have to put up this
kind of it's
persona.
Yes.
We have it all together. We
all
have everything.
Together.
We can't make a single mistake. Yeah. And I think that a lot of times when you account for those mistakes, or when you're discussing, those procedures, or the process that you're going to be going through for your client, they're willing to accept a lot as long as you're just transparent and upfront with them. If something slipped up, or if something flew under the radar, as long as you account for it and you discuss it and you're like, hey, this happened. However, we're going to do ABC. People are pretty willing to go with the flow. They hired you because you're the expert, and trust that trust that they put in you.
I think you hit something, because we talk all the time in branding and advertising about authenticity and just being genuine and really just doing that and being that in our personal lives as well, because at the end of the day, you really can't go wrong with being yourself, and admitting your faults, but also celebrating your wins too. That doesn't have to be like too confident or whatnot.
Well, and I think you hit the nail on the head with authenticity. I think that especially in marketing and branding, so much is orchestrated and fabricated and put together in traditional marketing. We see a lot of times nowadays people are yearning for the authenticity. They're willing to accept the flaws and mistakes as long as it's real. So authenticity, I think, is a big part, not just in your client relations, but just in a lot of branding strategies just in general. I think that I genuinely don't think that there's too many ways you can go wrong with that. I think that ultimately it's, even if the strategy that you implement taking in that authenticity, I think that it's only even if it doesn't work the greatest, marketing is an experiment. Again, no one size fits all solution. It's at least going to give you honest feedback and point you in directions that, okay, I was this way. People didn't particularly like this approach or didn't like it as well as we would have liked. How can we address this and change and grow ourselves?
Yeah, you open yourself up. Yeah. I mean, how many people do you meet that are just closed in? They don't want to hear anything new. They don't want to hear any criticisms, any comments, and they have that mindset, so nothing moves out of that
all the time.
I mean, it's stuck. Well, we've talked about this before. One of mine, and this is because I think the audience might know this, but I came to Glint about 2.5 years ago from Texas A&M School of Law, and before then a credit union in Fort Worth. And so I have always been on what we call the brand side. So I've never worked in an agency setting before, but I think I am the perfect person to work in an agency setting right now, because I know what it feels like to be the agency advocate within the organization or with our client, but within their organization. So I'm going to say what's really important between the client relationship and the agency relationship is for the agency to make sure that their client advocate looks like a rock star.
100%.
You want, at the end of the day, for that person's career to just flourish. Explode. You want people to look at that person for guidance. You want that person to feel confident when they walk into meetings and report performance, or even if performance isn't great at that point, have the confidence to explain how it can get better. And
sorry, go ahead.
I mean, a rock star. That, I think that is what you have to do.
I agree, and I think that your term advocate is the perfect term, because what a lot of agencies and marketers out there I don't think fully understand is that client or that individual is your advocate. They're your first line of defense, because they're going to meetings that you're not a part of.
And they are sometimes fighting for you. They are fighting for you amongst other leadership members, or even within just their coworkers. They're fighting for the program. They're fighting for the objectives out of the campaign. I mean, all of those things. And they are working really hard to do that.
Especially if you make their life easier. Like, if you make their life easier, they want you around, because like you're making them look good. They're making their job a little bit easier. They want to keep you there. So like 100%, making them look like a rock star. I agree. That's like a great one.
My best example is just when I was at Unity One, and we started being known for our digital solutions, whether that was social media or digital marketing, so forth. So everybody thought I was that think outside the box marketer. I mean, I was even in an article about that, but it was Glint.
Meanwhile, you're like, sure, I'll talk about that. Hey, Glint, what are you doing?
I know. And then I had a couple of other partners that really helped me as well, too. But it was Glint driving that, and they gave me a professional brand that people responded well to in the credit union industry. And for that, I will always be grateful. So
I think that leads me into my second one, which ties a lot into that, making them look like a rock star, is always having a solution-minded approach towards things. What's going to help them look like a rock star is that when those, because it's going to happen. Like, this is life. Like, there are going to be things that pop up that operate outside of the quote-unquote plan. You know what they say? Plans exist to fall apart.
That's
it. It's going to happen. So when that does occur, when you provide solutions to those problems, and not just reporting and saying, hey, this problem happened. If you come from a perspective of, hey, this happened, however, we're going to be doing this to compensate for that, or to adjust slightly so that we don't have that in the future.
Your end goal is not. Always remember the end goal. And that there are different ways to get there. Right? Would you agree with that?
No, I agree. I think that, like, if you keep those end goals in mind, no one on the ship cares how they get to dry land, just as long as they get there. That's very important. I think is is to keep them focused on the goal and that you're still moving towards the goal. You know, sometimes those problems occur and they think it's a roadblock and we've stopped. We haven't stopped. We're just taking a detour. So having that mindset, I think, really helps them.
I think, but you know, I don't know if it's like a society thing that has become popular, but everybody loves to be the devil's advocate.
Yeah.
This is not the place.
Yeah.
So if you're listening, if you are working with Glint, just know that we're not looking for the holes to crucify and bury you.
Yeah, no.
We're looking for the holes and the gaps to reduce that space.
Yeah.
And so, and that is not our attitude as we ask questions or get to know you and your goals.
We are simply asking questions to get more information and then take that information and develop a plan of pros and cons based on that information. That's it. That's all it is.
That
you know,
works for
we're
you.
just trying to figure out, you know, life is full of pros and cons. We could go left, we could go right. We just need to decide which pros and cons we're willing to work with and then go that direction.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, I have another.
Okay.
I have another thing that when I was on the brand side, it affected my relationships with the agencies that I chose to work with in some way. And that is, don't give me a lot of homework unless it is absolutely necessary.
I've been bad about that in the past. That's a weak point for me. You know, she's talking about like we're not perfect. That's one that I'm learning.
Don't
to
turn
be
this foot. I mean, even if you have to, think about the approach of doing it and how to get it, and also think about timing. Yeah. Because just as much as we can adhere to a deadline and a schedule and a timeline, we can be sensitive to our advocates in that way. Because my example was, look, I had just been fighting accounting to pay your invoice. And then I get an email with 10 different things, you know, that I need to do in order to make this campaign work. You know, and so sometimes it's best if we don't try to put all of the onus on our advocate and figure out, or either by communicating beforehand to say, look, we're going to move forward. If we can't reach you, will you give us that permission to work on your behalf? Something like that. And then that client understands what Glint is trying to do. But don't send me an email of 10 different things and I've got a staff, I've got things, I've got internal politics that I'm dealing with.
It can be very easy to fall into the trap of like, okay, they're paying us to do a job. Let's, you know, I'm going to be annoying and do my job. I'd rather be annoying and do my job than not be annoying and then not do my job. It can be very easy to fall into that trap. I've fallen into it in the past, you know, for other agencies and stuff. And I think that something that's very beneficial is just to remember that, like you're mentioning, you know, the particular items that are involved with your job or the agency's, you know, role, that's not their only job. And remembering that, again, these are clients are different people. If you're working for a big, you know, corporate entity, you know, that individual is working in a number of different departments, a number of different things. So it can be easy to fall in that trap of I want to be annoying and do my job. But
because we know what we do is really important. So it's kind of, I mean, you kind of just have to ride in the middle a little bit because it is.
Well, and that's why, you know, we talked about before, some of the best ways you can do that is find the right opportunities. And some of those opportunities present themselves is in pulse checks. Maybe if they're expecting some kind of status update, like we were talking about before with delivering, you know, having a solution mindset. You know, let's say, for instance, you need domain access to something. It's like, hey, we ran into this problem. We're not able to get, we'll say, for instance, get these emails out. However, we're thinking about doing X, Y, Z. To do that, we're going to need this thing. That's a more appropriate way to present those needs without overwhelming the client.
Or like you said, or at pulse, you know, or putting them all together, maybe at pulse checks and talking about it versus an email or there's
or just hey, I need this thing, or like, hey, you know, I got
there's
logged
all
out.
kind of solutions, but I think at the end of the day, being mindful. Maybe that's so there's not so much pressure to not, but maybe just be mindful of and have respect for the people we're working with on the brand side. I think at the end of the day, that's all we want.
I think you're right. I think that's the best route to go.
But I don't know. It was hard. I can just tell you my experiences, and I just try not to be that way.
Yeah.
On the agency side.
Yeah.
I've got one last one.
Okay.
And it is to manage expectations.
Oh, yeah, that's good.
Or to always be looking for a way to manage expectations. Yeah. And again, I will say that we're not the best at that, because we might get excited about a channel and we're just wanting to move forward, but we forget that we have to educate in order to get the same reaction from the people we're talking to. So sometimes, like, I'll sit in a meeting or something like that, and I'm just like, and I see the person across from me like, so that's an indication. You step back, start from square one, and explain.
I think that's good too, not just for client morale, but internal morale, because it can be very defeating, like, especially if internally, we're talking about this great idea, we know all the pieces, we know how it works, we're like, this is, high five, we're kicking butt, like, this is going to be awesome, and then the client hears it and they're like, okay,
it's crickets.
Yeah, it's just crickets. So yeah, managing expectations, I think that's a very good one.
Yeah.
Because that can happen, and that doesn't mean the idea is not good. Like, just because they don't react, it just, like you said, they're just not educated.
It's just not educated enough, and that's okay, because this isn't their bread and butter.
Yeah, that's why we're here.
Yeah, that's why we're here. And something that I often think with that as well is, how we always complain as marketers, whether you're on the agency side or you're on the brand side, everyone thinks that they're a marketer. Yeah. Everyone thinks that they have an idea of how long it takes to post a social media post.
Social media is the worst.
That's the worst. They think they can do it on their own. Yeah. So if I can do it on my own and post in a minute, everybody else should. Yeah. But they forget all of the components that go into an effective.
You're not trying to get your
post.
You're not trying to get your personal post to have, 50,000 impressions and like 5,000. You're not building it the same way. So you wouldn't if you built a house on the coast of Florida, where there's hurricanes and floods and stuff like that, you're not going to build a house there the same way you would build it in the middle of Arizona.
Right.
They're built differently. Yeah, they're built differently. So when you're building that, you have to keep in mind the environment and the circumstances that you're applying that to.
Yeah.
So, no, that's a very, very good one. I think that's a great one.
Definitely, because it takes longer. We're in it. We have the expertise.
The time.
I don't claim that I'm an astronaut and try to, know physics and whatnot. Yeah. So I generally stay in my lane, and that's the beauty of partnering with an agency, is that we're in this lane all the time, just immersed in it, and you can take your valuable time and put it elsewhere in leadership or in finances or whichever area of your organization that needs that support. You can do that.
And like you said, time is money. That's what they say. Time is money.
Time is money, and so it should feel good and feel like a relief. Yeah. But we always hear, well, it should take you this to do this. Yeah. And it's just not true.
Well, and like you said, education's key. Just talking actually, in this circumstance, we often have this occur, and then that relates to this, just bringing up that information and just educating them. And like I said, that goes back to, it's interesting how all these different things tie together, because that goes back to transparency of actually, there are some people out there that would get that kind of pushback and they roll with it because they just want to make the client happy and they want to keep that persona that we're talking about.
Right.
But having that transparency and having that ability to be actually, this is how it works. We know you're excited about your first foray into this, or maybe you've done this a few times, but marketing is evolving, and this is how it's functioning. The algorithms change, content changes, what's popular changes. This is kind of the trends we see, and this is kind of how it's developing now. Yeah. And then you provide that education, and then they roll with it. And,
and then you manage expectations. Full circle.
They all tie together.
Right around.
They all tie together.
Right around. Yeah. Well, we were kind of worried. Jonathan and I were worried that we could talk for 2 hours.
Well, we could talk about this forever.
So to save everyone and to be respectful of time, we're gonna cut it off there. But we have a few takeaways. Truly, transparency, very important for relationships, just being authentic and genuine, and saying what the problem is, but always coming with some sort of solution, so that the end goal is not altered in such a way that could hurt business. Solutions focus, that goes into transparency as well. Looking at things without, like, looking at them not to try to find holes, but looking at them to see how we can get to the next
Which
step.
ultimately reduces homework on the client. So it ties into that as well.
That's true. Mine that, of course, I love is making the client advocate look like a rock star at all times.
Yeah, exactly. You do those three things, then you make the client advocate look like a rock star.
So, for instance, like an example of that too is like we have a client and she meets with her executive team on a certain day of the month, every single month. Well, our reports are going to be in her hand prior to that, so that she can read it, know it, and speak confidently about her marketing program. So that's how we help. And yes, no lengthy homework either can really help. And I guess I'm going to take that out because that sounds kind of harsh. But just being more mindful of the people we work with and of their schedules, and having a little bit more empathy sometimes with that, and weighing it on what we think is important to get done.
For sure.
And then, of course, the last thing is managing expectations from the front or along the way, I guess, so that our clients truly know how long it takes for things to happen, and what all goes into each tactic that we present or propose.
100%.
So, I mean, those are good things. And again, I mean, we are always trying to be a percent better each day, or more than that. And so, that's our attitude here as we work at Glint.
Always being better.
Always being better. So, you can find us or watch all episodes of the Glint Standard on all social media platforms and all podcast platforms. We'd love to hear your thoughts, especially if it's a challenging thought. So stay in touch with us. How long?
22 minutes.
I knew.
That's a good time.
I knew we were going to go over. I knew we were going to.
Please give us a thumbs up below if you like this episode, and feel free to leave us any questions or comments you may have. To check out our past episodes, do so here. Subscribe to our channel below.